Well, I'm delighted to say that joining me on the Godcast this week is June Slater. June is a digital online creator and has got a huge following on social media. June, it's good to get you on the Godcast. How are you doing?
I'm all right, thank you. Thanks for inviting me on it.
That's great. It's great to get you on. I kind of stumbled across you, June, a few months ago, as you do, looking
Yeah.
through social media, and I come across this very strong character with forthright opinions, with a Lancashire accent, and I found out when I made touch that you're from Blackburn. How did you get into this whole world of digital creation?
Well, I went on Facebook about 10 or 11 years ago. I completely misunderstood what it was. Um, and I started a fun and laughter group. I just wanted to have a giggle. So I decided to start a fun and laughter group. We've got about 5,000 members. And I mainly did that. And anyway, one day sat in our second home in Austria, which was in a ski village, but it was summertime. My husband was knotting his eyebrows together watching Sky News, looking depressed, and I was just packing my bicycle up to go down to the lake for a swim with a chilled coffee in my backpack and saying, "What's up with you? Why do you look so dismal?" And he made that noise that Lurch makes in Adam's Family. And he said, "You know nothing, you dear." And I went, "What?" He said, "You haven't a clue what's going on. We're living in dark times." Now, this must have been about 9 years ago. So I asked him why, he outlined it. And bearing in mind, we had a second home in Austria, four small dogs. So we had a pet passport, reciprocal healthcare. It was in my interest to be in the European Union. And he said, "You don't understand what it's about, do you?" So he explained what he thought it was about. And I listened and I said, "Don't get me involved in politics. I'll be like a dog with a bone." And especially with time on my hands, I retired a number of years ago. And so I was in denial at first when he told me. I couldn't get my head around it. And I didn't want to know because I felt like I'd just had my whole life turned upside down, which I had actually. And but then the kind of crusader gene kicked in. And I thought people should know, people should know. So I started doing more and more research, getting involved with different things, following Pat Condell and people that made sense. And someone in politics, quite a revered elderly gentleman, said to me, "All you need to do, June, is look into stuff. And if it makes sense to you, you've probably got it right." So I decided to then set my post to public, which was a brave step for me. And I got quite a few trolls and idiots, but I didn't know what followers were. And then obviously, David said to me, "What are followers?" I said, "Oh, I think they're people who have a look at your page, but they're not on your mates list." He said, "Oh, you've got 4,000 followers." I thought it were ginormous, and I couldn't sleep that night. I thought, "Oh my God, 4,000 people following me. I don't know who they are. Help!" And anyway, so it was Brexit, of course, and a lot of people knew there was something wrong with Europe, but they didn't know what it was. So what I did during Brexit, I arranged fixed time calls for people like people working in engineering companies and hairdressers. So that on the lunch hour, we'd go in Facebook Messenger, visual, and they'd ask questions. So they'd all be together. So I'd answer what I knew. And obviously my knowledge grew as time went on, and Brexit won, rightly so. And as you know, a lot of towns like Burnley and Blackburn and Accrington, Darwin, Oswestwhistle, we've all been neglected. We know that. Swamped with immigration, yet no infrastructure to make sure it worked cohesively. Just abandoned, really. These mill towns, even in Yorkshire, all the mill towns have been abandoned because the politicians don't believe we exist outside the London bubble. And you've got a mayor in Sadiq Khan who obviously is ruining the city of London. So anyway, so it went on from there really. That's how I got involved. And I can remember going on this ski slope one day, and we were going on this lift, and we jumped on the ski lift, and I'm looking at this fantastic scenery, blue sky, mountains, the land that God created. I've always said that God saved Austria for himself. It's that beautiful. There's no graffiti, They all go to church on a Sunday and they take their granny, and they're not embarrassed to be seen with a dribbling old wreck walking by them. No, they're completely, it's a Christian country, and Austrian values come first. It's something to be admired, actually. Just a bit heavy going on the rollout, if you know what I mean, when they came along. They're just a bit like, you must have it. Anyway, the country itself is gorgeous. No litter, family values. Shops are closed on a Sunday. Respect God. Little cruise. I'm telling you this because you're like, you've got it on, aren't you? You're religious. There's little crucifixes as you go in every village. It's a little shelter with a roof. Jesus on the cross. In summer, it's filled with fresh flowers, and in winter, candles. Totally respectful. Even up on a mountain, you'll find it. So I really admire that, the way they've kept the values. They tried to introduce halal meat in Austria, you know. Nobody did any campaigning. They just boycotted the shops that did it and threw red paint over the windows. It was over and done within about 6 weeks because they weren't going to put up with it. You know, they actually have quite fastidious farming out there. It's small level farming. You know, herds are big if there's 150 cows. The meat is beautiful. The butchers are first class. The fruit and veg come from Italy, not Spain, so they tend to be a bit tasty. They're not forced as much. It's a well-run country. I can't fault it, apart from the fact it's hard work. I'm getting older, running 2 houses. So I'm at this crossroads in my life where I feel that my country is going down the pan, and the more I find out, the more I realise. Then I made all these political contacts because I signed myself up to volunteer for Vote Leave. And so I went out on a Saturday in the market square and tried to interrupt shoppers, and I could see it was hopeless. I thought, they're busy, they've worked all week. They don't want some natural old bat like me. Oh, which way are you voting in the European Union? And I decided it was useless. And I was a bit angry, actually, because I ended up being like Billy Graham. I was stood on a bench, quite evangelical, preaching. You don't know what it's like. It's a communist enterprise. They're going to take your freedoms off you, which sounded absolutely bonkers back then. But now we can see, what's happening to the world with these globalists that don't seem very Christian, do they? Excuse me. So the market superintendent came and asked me to get down. Excuse me. So I came home and I thought, I can't believe what's happening. So I opened my laptop and I did this video where I said, I can't remember, David Cameron. David Cameron was the Prime Minister at the time. And so I went online and said, Tony Blair, do one. Gordon Brown, do one. David Cameron, if only, do one. You can get rid of your Prime Minister if you don't like him, but you can't do that with the European Union. You can't even name the 5 presidents without using Google. And these people have a firm grip on your life. Anyway, I made this video. It's about 2 minutes long. Put it up on my Facebook page. And it was a Saturday. And I looked at it about 4 hours later, and it had 1 million views. Nearly had a bloody heart attack. 1 million. And then I looked at all these outstanding friend requests. And then I looked, the following had gone from 4,000 to 22, like in a day. And I could see that people were just desperate for information. So I started putting more out. And I basically just worked on Facebook for a number of years until lockdown. And I had a Twitter account, but Twitter's a bit like a bloody boxing ring. It's like cage fighting is Twitter. My God, you need some good underwear on for Twitter. Get among it. And I thought, oh no, they won't like me and my videos with northern accent because they're all political bubble types and they're all well spoken. And it was just from the north. And they kept sending me pictures of flat caps and ferrets in my thread. So then I just did stupid videos saying, I can't stay long because we're just cooking some roadkill and we've got to bath the ferrets by 6 o'clock. And you know what it's like when our Stan hasn't had his tea. We're just softening some pelts in the kitchen with Auntie Irene's gums because she's had all the teeth. Just rubbish, making a mockery of trying to make out that people from the north don't know anything. I had some fun with it as well. So I ventured onto Twitter one day thinking I've got to give this a go because I was a bit astounded by lockdown. And anyway, my videos were well received. And I think I had about 3,000 followers when I started actually using it. I only retweeted other people's stuff till then. I was a bit afraid of it. And you get a lot of trolls. And anyway, it grew and grew. So I've got 200,000 followers on Twitter now. And I've got about 200,000 on Facebook. And I've just started a YouTube channel about 6 months ago. You can get me by Googling June Slater 63, and that'll take to my YouTube. And I do more lengthier stuff because it's YouTube, but only 15 minutes, say. And more or less how to get through it. It's not all about just the politics. There's so much that people don't understand about politics, and they should. And we, the working class particularly, have been kept out of politics. The Bubble, the Emily Maitlises, the Kusenbergs, the BBC, ITV, Channel 4, they all talk in this political speak we don't understand. People don't want to look foolish by asking questions, so they don't. And I wanted to open it up. So I would say, look, when they're saying this, what they really mean is that, whatever it is. And it seems to have worked because people have stuck with me. And I'm kind of nobody's yes man because I work on my own. I'm not a member of Reform, although currently I'm supporting what they're trying to do. And I call out stuff where I think we're being had.
I was going to ask you, Jean, what you thought it was that made you popular, but maybe if I tell you what I think and you tell me if it's rubbish or not. I think that common sense, working class approach, almost 1980s Coronation Street kind of outside the Rovers, tell us as it is
I've
what.
been called Bet Lynch a number of times, I can tell you.
Well, I was thinking more Rita Sharples, but
Thanks a bunch.
I'm
I'll
only
get me
joking.
neck.
I'm only joking, but you know what I mean, don't you? That over the wall conversation
Yeah.
that from I was a big fan of Les Dawson. That over the wall conversation that just says it as it is. And in a different context, I'm involved in the Church of England General Synod, and I've been pushing for working class vocations. And I go to these posh places in London and speak how I think, and people they do find it refreshing. And I'm just thinking, oh, I didn't actually realize it was that important, but. Do you think that is the appeal of Eugene? Is that you just down straight talking, you say it as it is, there's no airs and graces, and people need to hear that at the moment?
Well, I think it's got to be because there isn't anything else, is there? It's not like I'm artistic or I've got some really smart branding and a really good intro number, to listen to music before I start. And I'm not exactly young enough to become some sort of physical icon. I'm at 67. So I don't know what it is. I think it's just that people are appreciative that they don't feel stupid anymore. You can ask an inane question. It doesn't matter. I ask them. I don't know everything.
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid to ask. The other big thing, of course, is if you do get it wrong, stick your hand up and apologise. If MPs did that, we'd have a better life. And if the media did it, we wouldn't have any problems because they get it wrong most of the time. And that's the other thing I tried to fight because very tough for an amateur blogger to try and challenge what's coming out from the mainstream media, especially from your state broadcaster, which is normally utter. So that's a tough gig, that is. But nevertheless, they trick themselves up. Your followers trust you, and it is a very much a trust thing. And I kind of see so many people do what I do, but there's always a grift behind it. There's always donate to my this, crowdfund me my that, and I've not asked for any money off the public. My Facebook pages aren't even monetized. Twitter, I paid for a blue tick, 150 quid for a year. Well worth it because Twitter gives you some money back and it stops the trolls. You can write longer pieces and do longer videos. It's a brilliant system. If you want to do what I'm doing, I don't think it's a very good system if you've just got a personal page. Google, I take a bit of money off Google because I got a plagiarist he'd started a YouTube channel just with my stuff on, called himself my name, and was making money off my back. So I took the hump at that. And I didn't realise it, but he had also got Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at my expense. So anyway, I managed to find out who he was because unfortunately I'm like a dog with a bone. And I managed to persuade him. I don't mean in like a Godfather type way. There were no horses' heads involved. I just managed to persuade him to take the bloody lockdown, and he did. And David said, the only way you can get past this is get your YouTube going, which I was a bit reluctant to because I enjoyed Twitter. And he said, monetize it. Then you're important to YouTube because they stand to earn money from you. They can put ads on, and you're not monetized. So YouTube won't give a monkeys about you. So I did that, and I started in July, just because of the plagiarist. Really got it to 10,000 subscribers from nothing, and I'm at 60,000 now. And I actually really enjoy it because it's a slower pace than Twitter.
Yeah.
It's not contentious, and people that come on are usually people who have decided that they like you, which is a lot easier than some of the ones you get on Twitter. Who'll do something like a close-up of my neck because it's got a scar on it, which I've had since birth. I'm pretty familiar with it. I don't really need anyone else to, oh, look, you've got a scar on you. No, I know. Guess what? I'm the victim here. I had it done to me. To do that.
June, I'm going to jump on your coattails because I've only got about 2,000 subscribers. So any of your fans, June, get on my blooming YouTube and get subscribed. But
I'll be sharing this, so they'll soon be aware of you.
So, what I was going to say is, I love my podcast. It's mine, and you'll get all that. Nobody tells me what to do. I ask you, I want to ask on, and that's fine. And I like to think that I take it seriously. That but what nobody gives me is editorial input, and there are some strange folks out there. There aren't, like you say, that the grifters there, that they've got a. What's your kind of take on social media, June? Now you've got a few years' experience behind you. Do you think it needs closer monitoring, or are you just a full-on advocate for free speech and say what you think?
Well, it depends what you call free speech. I mean, free speech. Obviously, my mother said to me once, she said it to a woman in our house, and this woman said, well, talking about over the garden, well, I always speak my mind. And my mother said, well, you better expect to always be in trouble then, because a lot of things run through my mind. I wouldn't dream of voicing out here, which I think is pretty logical. And I think when people jump on the bandwagon, I mean, if you saw what I put on Keir Starmer's Twitter feed, you'd realise there is an element of free speech. After I call him brain dead and a political unit, there's quite a bit of free speech going on. But the trouble is, people go over the top. Once you start inciting violence, you see, for me, I never ask anybody to take to the street because I don't think it works. And, what is a demonstration? All right, we all trail to London. It has to be London, usually on a weekend. All MPs have gone home. Trail to London, stand about getting cold, spend a fortune on bus fare or train tickets, and come home and think you've done something for your country. When really, if those 50, 60,000 people all emailed their MPs and pointed out to the MP, this is a critical thing about campaigning, pointed out to the MP, let's say West Streeting for a start, that, dear Mr. Streeting, conscious of the fact you only have 500 seat majority and there's 1,000 of us writing to you at this moment, you stand to be out of office if you don't listen to our requirements. And then list your freaking requirements. That's the way to do it. Because if you did it and your next door neighbour did it and all the people in his constituency did it, then his aide that's watching that email will go, oh my God, Wes, have you seen this? And that's the take notice of the thing with the most volume. As far as social media goes, the mainstream media is dying on its feet. And I know this because I've worked for a newspaper, the Lancashire Evening Telegraph. You'll be familiar with it. And it was the Burnley Evening Star. And I worked for the Burnley Evening Star as well. I used to do teleads. And there was...
I did.
Did you?
I used to sell the Situations Vacant page in the Burley Citizen newspaper.
Did you? Yeah, well... I worked for the Lancashire Evening Telegraph group, and I did the Evening Star miscellaneous sales. I've done motors and I've done Situations Vacant. But when I was doing miscellaneous sales, I can still remember his voice. There was a Burnley dog kennels that sold, and he always began with quality puppies, Lhasa Apso, Shih Tzus, Alsatians, Cavalier King Charles. And he'd go on like this, and then he'd go, Nutshaw Kennels, and he'd give the number, 28617. I can still remember it. That's sad, isn't it? Nutshell Kennels, Burnley, 28617. And then put bloody phone down. Anyway, his son's took it over since. So and I got one of my dogs there eventually. So I'm quite familiar with Burnley and Burnley people. And, I know what we want. I know what we want from towns like mine, anyway, Blackburn and Burnley.
Yeah.
And I think social media is where you're going to get your news. Absolutely.
Yeah.
You're not going to get it. Forget the BBC. It's all right if you want to watch Strictly Come Dancing or ITV if you want somebody ripping across the ice and watch some documentary. That's fine, but don't rely on them for news. It's not news, it's propaganda. They're all saying the same thing.
Yeah.
So you need to turn to someone you can trust. And I'm not meaning me. You might not like me. But there are a lot of good people out there that you can. So I tend to recommend other people, which is something else that bloggers don't do.
No.
I like your audience. I don't care. I want you to find out as much as you can from as many people as you can. Then make your own mind up.
Yeah, there's a few things I want to ask you about, June, and there's so much going on in the world, isn't there? If it's Russia or Ukraine or whatever, but you know what's really passionate to me is Burnley, and I know your audience will be wider, but so maybe I can ask a question that reaches into a wider sphere as well. Is that I've grown up in Burnley, and um, I don't know. I sometimes don't know how to describe myself. I don't know if a right-wing socialist is the right word, but so and what I mean by that, June, is that
I think that's really good.
pardon?
I think that's really good.
Yeah,
A right-wing socialist.
yeah.
Belter.
When I was when I was a lad, Burnley was full of industry. As Blackburn was, my uncle Jimmy used to work at Mullard's in between Burnley and Blackburn, which people around here will remember. And we had all the big companies, Michelin and Lucas Aerospace and Prestige and all these companies. So in many regards, I understand what Trump is saying about, we need to look after ourselves. And now Burnley has fallen into a place where, Boohoo, I think, are the biggest employer in the town. But I work in a context on in Burnley around the council estates of Stoops Estate and Griffin Estate, and I see real low levels of social deprivation. I see high levels of poverty, and I don't just mean financial poverty. I mean kind of just social well-being, kind of aspirational poverty, all those kind of things. And I wonder where the answer is in all that. Are those bygone days just history now? Can they ever be brought back? And how do you go about tackling an issue like, Burnley Estates are no different to Blackburn Estates, no different to Preston Estates or Liverpool Estates or Southampton Estates. It's the same across the country. I'd be really interested to know what you think from the conversations that you've had over the years.
Well, they've really done a number on us, and I'm talking about the Tories and the Labour Party. There's no difference in them. One's just heading to hell at high speed, and the other one's going on a horse and cart. Still hell. And the only way to change that is to change the politicians, the legislator. You see, the thing is as well, the legislator is supposed to operate separate to the judiciary and the police, but currently it doesn't. It's all one thing. It's all been mushed together, and the police appear to be serving the judiciary, and the judiciary judges are now political appointments. It's as simple as that. So we're doomed under either of the two main parties, and so we need to get better politicians. But politicians starts at grassroots levels, which is councillors. What we need: Burnley, Blackburn, Accrington, Darwen, Oswald, the whole Hyndburn area, and the outskirts, Preston, Bamber Bridge, wherever you live in. What we need is grassroots level thinking, and stop this pompous twit thinking where you're prepared to spend money on carbon capture before you'll clean a drain. Let's get some infrastructure back. Let's stop sending the money overseas when you can deplete your farmers or your pensioners from, for instance, recently the winter fuel allowance, which hits the needy. If you can deplete that and send money overseas to farming aid, then you are the wrong people in power. It's as simple as that. David Lammy doesn't care about this country. There's nobody sitting in Whitehall that's bothered about this country. They see themselves as players on a world stage, and that's what's got to stop. What we want is some people who are bothered about. I'm bothered about what's going on here. Not bothered what colour your skin is. I'm not bothered about what religious domination you're from. I'm bothered about how we make it better for everybody that lives here. And the only way to do that is get better people, and you don't have to have experience to put their hand up and say, I'll have a go at this. But have a go at it in a sensible manner. And don't, like the migrant crisis, it's not the migrants, it's politicians. You're sat there in Africa with no hope of a better life, and you get a message on your phone from Angela Merkel saying, come to Germany, it's free. You're going to have a go. I would. I'd want to come. I'd want to do it. And what you've got to remember is a lot of political nonsense talked, absolute nonsense, most of it coming from high-end ministers and the leader, which is like, it's very difficult to stop things. No, it's not. You need a political, well, if you want to stop the boats, for instance, which is a big issue to many people because it impacts immigration. Immigration impacts everything, housing supply, teaching, hospitals. So your immigration is your root cause. Mismanaged immigration. Immigration in itself, managed properly, is a really good thing. And immigrants who have something to offer should be welcome. But this business of the influx of people we've had coming from countries where they can't even get on with each other, then sticking them in a HMO house with different people from different cultures. It's the same culture, but different factions of it, is never going to work. It's going to cause unrest, violence, and destruction. So if you want to stop the boats coming across the channel, the easy solution is this. You tariff France. You turn around to France, because you've got to remember the channel is a safety net for us and we should be using it, and we're not. And all you say is you don't give France 50 million quid. France are using us like we should have been using Rwanda. They're using us as their soak away. There you go. We'll take you safely to British shores, then you're off our hands. They don't want them. So unfortunately, we are their solution. So we've got to stop that. And the way to stop that is tell the French that we're going to put 25% on all the wine, the cars, and the cheeses. You need to do those three products. We buy other stuff. We buy helicopters. We buy wind farm sales. We buy all sorts from France. And we have French energy companies selling us electricity. Well, that'd all stop. You just need someone who's going to say, no, we're going to take this back under control in our own country. Tariff France, your boats are stopping a fortnight. It's as simple as that. And I might sound cocky saying it like that, but you've seen what's happened with Trump with tariffs. Tariffs are a passive way of getting your own way. Should have been done when we left the EU. But unfortunately, we have become, the EU is a dominatrix to Britain. And we've got wet, chinless wonders that didn't want to leave in the first place, that have succumbed to it all. So you tariff France, that stops your boats. They'll do the job. You don't need to give them any money. And then you start sorting out your immigration. And then what you need is people like you who are bothered. You need people who are bothered about the country. I'm not bothered what's going on in Somalia. I don't care. And I don't care that you think that's bad. I'm not interested in what's happening. I don't understand this sliding scale for refugees either. Apparently, if you're coming from Gaza, you're number one important. But if you're coming from Yemen, nobody gives a toss. If I were living in Yemen, I'd be just as bothered, wouldn't you? So there's this sliding scale of importance of refugees and who should get aid. And unfortunately, we haven't got anybody in either of the big parties that are prepared to do anything about it. We have a slither, and I mean a slither, some glimmer of hope with the Reform Party, because they are willing to actually give it a go. And they're further forward than most people because they've got 5 MPs with 4 million votes. And what you've got to take away from this, the Liberal Democrats have 72 MPs with 3 million votes. How is that a fair system? And you've got people telling us how to behave in a war, like Ed Davey, who couldn't even look after the sub-postmasters, some of them in Lancashire, that got done over because of a faulty IT system that no one had owned up to. How many years has that gone on? The blood scandal. You don't get, they're still paying people out for thalidomide. So the people that have had adverse reactions in the last recent debacle, and I'm not going to mention it because it's difficult on YouTube, the people who have had adverse reactions, they have no sodding chance because everybody that's making the money is indemnified. You've got Pfizer who made £100 billion, dollars, should I say, 100 billion in 12 months. It took them 20 years to make 40 billion. Tell me where that's fair. Tell me where that's for our health. Because to me, if it's for your health and it's urgent, it should be done for free. It should be done at covering your cost. You should cover your cost. You shouldn't be making profit. So there's a lot of stuff sorting out.
I mean, it's great. It's great listening to you. I can hear that my right wing socialism doing this, listening to you speak, and I'm just a couple of things there. And I'm sure people are giving me pelters by challenging about somewhere like Somalia, and I get it. I do get it. But I my interest in Israel and Palestine, for example, comes from the fact that I've been a couple of times and I've seen it and I've seen the tension between the two. So I suppose if you see it, I do have a thing in my that I do say to people, if you see it with your eyes, you feel it in your heart. And that is an example where I've seen it in my eyes and I felt it in my heart. I've not been to Somalia. Should I have the same level of care? Probably as a Christian, people say I should do, but I understand what you're saying. But then also, I also agree with what you say about, I think we do piss a lot of the money down the river, for want of a better expression. In Burnley last year, they spent £10 million of 11 in an up agenda to re-pedestrianise the town, which nobody particularly wanted, up to the football ground. And meanwhile, the guys on the estate are getting absolutely nothing to their to lift them, and another
Mm.
right wing view might be saying they need to lift them up themselves, but some people have lived in that context for so long that they do need some help. And so this is where my tension comes. I'd be interested to know what your response might be.
Well, we spend money in the wrong areas, from the grassroots up, from the councils to the local government to these new mayors that are coming to pass, like Andy Burnham.
Mm.
They're self-serving. Even the church, even your lot, even the Church of England, higher up than you, they're self-serving. It's a business and it's approached like a business. That's why people have lost interest. Christianity's on the way and Islam's growing. But I wouldn't lose hope, because the biggest thing that's growing is atheism. People always compare the two religions. Well, that's not the worry. The worry is atheism, because that's the biggest thing that's growing in this country, because people have they've lost hope. Because unfortunately, Christianity has remained with the Church of England pompous, and you've got the head of the Church of England, the King, who was rumouredly converted to Islam, according to some reports. Palace have denied this, of course, but he's very pro-Islam. He's always very good at explaining why Islam is so good. And I'm sure there's a lot of devout Christians that have spent their life being good people, don't really want to hear how marvellous someone else's religion is. But at the same time, we're not actually saying it's bad. We're just saying, this is the guy that's supposed to be the head of the Church of England. Your top man's rubbish. It's as simple as that. Cardinal, whatever he's called, rubbish. You've got some really rubbish top people who run it like a business. And there's not many people that you see that have I'll call it a heart. I think to do anything to do with the church, you should have a heart as big as a balloon. And we haven't. We've got businessmen. We've got people who have some hidden agenda.
Yeah, I
And
did
I
actually
think
say this, Jude. I said this in the General Synod that we all like living in two parallel universes. There are some, of course, I'm going to defend the church because I'm a priest. I might as well give it up if I wasn't going to do that. And there are some fabulous churches doing some fabulous things, but there are, like as you say, there's a bucket load of money at the top that's going everywhere, but to the heartlands like Burnley and Blackburn,
yeah.
that really would benefit from some injection of cash and support. But where does that leave you with faith then? Do you think the church has got a role to play in society? I do, because I live it and see it and breathe it. But what's your view from where you are?
I think the church has a role to play, definitely. And I think that Christianity has been totally neglected. But I think a lot of that is the way it's put across. If I'd known a vicar like you when I was younger, I would have probably shown more of an interest in it, because you're making it more human. I mean, Christianity at the end of the day is your everyday life. It's how you treat other people. My mother was probably an excellent Christian, because every time I came home from school, there was always somebody in our house having a sit down with a cup of tea, probably a fag in those days, talking about the problems, and my mum would help them sort it out, because she was a she was a natural philosopher, I suppose you'd say, no training. But in those days, you didn't go for counselling, did you? If you didn't have anybody in your family, you'd always know a neighbour that was pretty savvy, and that's how we sorted stuff out. And I think the other thing that's broken down with society, I was brought up in a terraced house called Emily Street in Blackburn, and it's demolished now. It's still called Emily Street, but it's full of different housing. My granny lived at the bottom. My auntie Maud lived in the other street. My uncle Richard and Auntie Pearl lived next door but one. There were no babysitting. I used to go round my relatives, and your relatives sorted you out, and your family stayed close. But these days we've expanded. I'm guilty of it myself. I left Blackburn when I was, before I was 30. And people go to university and then they meet some from another part of the country. They end up marrying and moving to we've spread out, and it's happened to a lot of people. I think one of the biggest areas that suffered from this is elderly care. And I saw this with Austria. When we were buying our house in Austria, it was really difficult to find a house for one family. And you'd look at these typical chocolate box houses and you'd go and see them. But the bottom floor would be an apartment, the middle floor would be another, and the top floor would be another, because they believed in generational living, whereby grandma and granddad live at the bottom, mum and dad live in the middle, kids live at the top. So you've always got somebody there for babysitting. You've got somebody there to take care of your old age, and it kind of works. That's how they live parochially. I'm not saying they do it in the cities, but I think that should make a comeback. If there's any advice I give to anybody to protect themselves in these difficult times, is if you get on with your family, live with your family. If you get on enough to be around them, I think generational living is the way forward, because you're not going to get elderly care. We're paying £1,500 a week for Dave's dad, and because his mum's got savings, a house. There's about 40 residents in the home. There's only 2 paying. The rest are getting it off the state. How sickening is that when you've worked all your life and probably saved up and not gone out and not bought a packet of fags or whatever's gone on, and then you're just going to watch it? £1,500 a week's a lot of money. That goes quickly. So my advice for you, I think the best thing we can do for ourselves, because we can't trust politicians, is start from inside, get this right, get your head right, sort your head out. Then the next place to sort out is your home. And if your home's a mess, get it tidied up. Don't use any excuses sitting about with loads of beer cans and it being a mess. Tidy it up. Even if you only got to wipe a few windowsills down, make your home environment, because that is where your mess begins. It begins in here, then out in your home. Make it as pleasant as you can to be around.
Yeah.
Stick with your family if you get on with them. Obviously, dump them if you don't. There's not what you can do about that.
Do you know what, Jin? You talk so much sense. I mean, we have chronic fly tipping around here, and it drives me up the wall. It's like, if we're going to make a start, let's make the environment we live in look half decent, and it drives me absolutely crackers, and I just love you. I love your common sense approach. I mean, and I think it's so refreshing and needed, June. And I could talk to you all afternoon. I wrote a lot of questions. I've not gotten through half of them, but where do you see it all going? I mean, I'm in my 50s. I remember the miners' strike was the first thing that really struck me as a kid, and things do seem quite scary, for want of a better word, for all of us at the minute. Do you think things will settle down, June? And do you think that will be under a new prime minister? And if that is a new prime minister, do you think Farage is in the driving seat to be the next prime minister?
I think that everybody's afraid. Doesn't matter if you've got money or if you're skin. We're all afraid. Every single one of us. The ones with money don't know where to put it because the banks are wobbly. The ones that are renting out properties with mortgages on that are suddenly gone up and the rent's coming in, don't cover that. Everybody's affected, whether you're rich or you're poor. Remember that. There's no escape route. Once you realise you can't escape, you have to fight, it puts a different mindset on it. And we can do something about this. So what you've got to look at, and this is why when I first started doing this blogging, when I was sat on the ski lift saying, where's it all going to end? What's going to happen? Look at this beautiful scenery, knowing that this could all come to an end one day because we won't be allowed to travel, for instance, because of agendas. One of the things I really thought about was you can actually change it, but it has to come from you. And I think that it's no good saying is Farage right. Farage is the only one with anything on offer. Nobody else is offering anything. The Tories are fractured. They've had 14 years to do something to show us, and we're sick of voting for the one that's not as bad as the other. We should have a better choice. The only choice you've got, really, is Nigel Farage. You see, people, there's this talk going on about unite the right. There is no unite the right. The right's already voted. There's your 4 million votes to reform. That was the right. We're done. We're spent. That's the right. They voted. Now, if you want to be a prime minister, you need about 12 million votes. Those votes are going to come from the middle ground. They're going to come from some of Starmer's voters, actually, because they're all naffed off with him. Everybody's naffed off with him. And the saddest thing is, I felt worse 7 years ago going to dinner parties, listening to my friends and looking at them thinking, like my husband probably looked at me, God, they're clueless. They haven't a clue what's coming. If I could have just woken everybody up then, would have been sat in a different country. But nobody could see it because we all got fat and comfortable. We all went on 5 holidays a year to Tenerife for 30 quid. You've seen people, they're always going on holiday. You used to have one a year. I remember those days. So we've got complacent in our affluence. And even being poor is quite affluent in this country because you've got your benefits checks rolling in. And do you know what I mean? It's not like you're scratching around with like Fedici, whatever she's called, with water bottle, living 30 miles up water. We're not that bad. So unfortunately, it had to get as bad as this to wake the country up. Because in the last election, Keir Starmer isn't in with a whacking majority. Keir Starmer's in because the apathetic never got off their arse and voted. Nobody expected Reform to do as well as they did. And it was Nigel Farage coming back that did that. Rupert Lowe's saying a lot of the right things, and we like to hear him. He's a great speaker. But nobody had heard of him. These other, and Richard Tice, he lost the last time. If Nigel hadn't come back, these 5, I think Lee Anderson would be in. But these other MPs wouldn't have their seats if Nigel Farage hadn't come back. So that's your catalyst. You need a face, like on a bucket of Kentucky Fried Chicken. You need to, when the time comes, the next election, you need to pop that face up and say, he's back. He's offering something different. The rest of them aren't. And it's not utopia, it's damage control. So unfortunately, we're not going to get utopia. We're going to get damage control. Because the other parties, your Lib Dems and your Tories and Labour, they're only offering the damage. That's all they've got on offer. They've had all this time to do something and they've done nothing but rape us. I want to say rape, I mean take all our resources. And, who in the right mind thinks this race to zero is going to do any good when you're allowing China to build coal-fired power stations? They're opening 2 coal mines a week. They've just built a 2,000-kilometre railway just for transporting coal. The build carbon footprint of that is enough to destroy anything. How can you do that when the only reason, and people don't understand this, the only reason that China is allowed to behave that way, and India and Indonesia, is because they get foreign aid. There's a loophole in the Paris Accord. Because they get foreign aid, they don't have to make any timeline on getting to zero. They can just say, yeah, we'll have a go. So think of the world as a football pitch and Great Britain sat in the middle as a pound coin. And everywhere's spewing emissions out. And Britain decides not to spew any out because that's what they're after, zero. So the pound coin stops spewing emissions. The rest of the football pitch full. You tell me what happens atmospherically that day that we get to that target. You tell me how the atmosphere changes. You tell me and I'll back it because it doesn't. Nothing changes. We've got people in this country making us deprived of energy. The green tariffs on our energy prices are ridiculous.
I know. Well, we were meant to get a boiler. June, we were meant to get had to get a new boiler at church, and the carbon net zero one was just ridiculously expensive. £75,000 more than off the shelf one,
Yeah, but the other thing, it's not practical. Heat pumps have their place, but it's in new properties specifically designed for that type of heating, well insulated. People don't get told. They'll tell you the boiler price for a new boiler, an electric heat pump, but they won't tell you that actually to make it work, you'll have to have your floor insulated, your walls insulated, your loft re-insulated, your windows changed, and add some radiators, and it still won't work. So unfortunately, we are being fed a pup here. We are being absolutely goosed at every opportunity. And as you know, with Keir Starmer, a lot of people who aren't well off will have voted for Labour mindset, Labour, working man. This Labour Party is for the champagne socialists. It's for the Islington set, the ones who are jumping in a taxi to go to a smart wine bar and discuss politics. It's for the Emily Maitlises, and it's for the Lewis Goodalls, and it's for the Kusenbergs and the Mandelsons that are all friends together. They're voting for themselves. They're voting for a little world where they'll be safe. Not us. We're cannon fodder. We can just go jump. Well, nobody's interested. So you have to fight for yourself. That's why I think it's important to get your own immediate world sorted out. If you can have a government that can lock your elderly in an old person's home and devoid them, think about this, because I feel strongly about it. Probably because I'm heading that way myself at 67. But if you think about an old person and they've lived in a home, brought a family up, they've had a partner, they've had a full life, birthday parties, giving the kids what they can, and they've gone from that position to nothing. They've gone from not only losing their loved ones and giving up the family and giving up the home, and then told to take what possessions will fit in a single bedroom. That's where they're sitting. That's where these people are. So the biggest thing to happen to them is visits from the family. And some idiotic politician, some bloody lunatic called Boris Johnson, who was absolutely blackmailed, I believe, by the teachers' unions to lock down, decided it was in our best interest to lock anybody in a home without that final connectivity to life itself, especially for a generation that were probably Christians. That should never happen to this nation again.
No.
You should resist with every bone in your body. That is nothing to do with your health. And unfortunately, a lot of care home owners liked it because it's easier to run a care home without the visitors. That should never happen again. These people have one tenuous link to life, that's seeing their loved ones, seeing their great-grandchildren come in a pram. They need to kiss and touch. I'll never forgive this government, and I'll fight them every way I can, because it's not happening again. No way. Not when people are making rules up. And you see the money that was spent on travel by the World Health Organization during a time you can't even get married to your girlfriend, and a health minister that's groping and fondling his girlfriend from outside his own home. Well, weddings were cancelled, relationships broke up because we're to stay safe for a virus that's been around since time itself, where everything was based on Duff modelling that never came to pass, where people who died within 28 days of a test, even if they were run over by a bus, went down as one of those deaths. No, I'm sorry, this government's a lot to answer for. Every single one of those MPs should hang their heads in shame, utter shame for what they did to this country. And on the back of it not being very well off anyway, then Brexit gets blamed because we didn't leave the European Union until New Year's Eve 2019. And we're shut down as a commerce. We're shut down by March. How can it be Brexit's fault? Furlough wasn't Rishi Sunak's idea. It was an off-the-shelf idea from the Civil Service. It was ready to go. Another crippler. Duff PPE, £8 billion worth, sat in fields, renting fields to pile it up while we can burn it. While somebody walks away a new millionaire.
Yeah.
It makes the mafia look like a charity.
It really evokes COVID was a torrid time for me. I saw it firsthand, funerals with a handful of people present, that touch and kiss that you referred to. It was pretty dreadful.
Well, your health minister's groping his girlfriend, remember that? Your health minister's groping his girlfriend and you can't console your mother. These people are evil. Evil.
June, you are one fabulously opinionated woman. And you've got a huge fan club, and people can I'm sure even more people will follow you. But if you want to follow me, I'm on X at Alex DJ Frost. I've got a book called Our Daily Bread from Argos to the Altar about my life in Lancashire. June, I've loved every minute, and I'm really grateful for your time. You're a force of nature, and thanks for coming on the Godcast.
All right, then we'll have to do it again sometime.